Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're going to be doing episode 10 of 5 more board game rules mistakes. These are just a variety of different rules that either I have learned and taught incorrectly for a long time and have just realized they were wrong, or I have learned a copy of our own game that somebody else has taught me and I found some rules corrections that I needed to implement. So very excited to talk about these games, and if you've made any of these rules mistakes, please let me know down in the comments below, or what have been some rules mistakes that you have made yourself. Hopefully this video makes everybody realize that we are all human and everyone makes mistakes, and it's okay to share about these mistakes and what sort of things they changed in the games. So let's go ahead and talk about the first game. All right, 1 second. And I should be able to share the tab. Sorry about that. Having some issues with the StreamYard. All right. Here we are. So our first game here is for a lockup, a role player tale. Now this is a game where you're going to be playing as a group of people inside of the lockup prison, the callback prison. And the whole premise of the game is you are trying to place these workers into different areas and have more power than the other characters. So as you do this, you're going to be going, oh, sorry about that. I'm still having some issues with the live feed here. All right, I am going to... Oh no. Hold on, let me fix this really quick. Share screen. All right, that should work well. Let's see if it works here. All right, sorry about that. Trying to make sure this is working here. All right, let's go ahead and just see what we can do with just some control pastes. All right, this should work fine. All right, so Lockup Role Player Tale has you playing a group of prisoners. You can be placing your workers into different areas of the board and gaining control of these zones. The stronger your strength, the better the action is. So it's up to you to use some hidden information and public information to take stronger actions. Now, I really enjoy this whole placement of these workers, and I think the game is a very short, simple experience, but I think it does its job well. With that being said, I think that the new Lockup Breakout expansion adds some interesting new pieces. It adds a new character that you can use that lets you move around the prison, as well as a new catacombs board that offers you additional rewards on the bottom of the track. So the Lockup Breakout expansion, I think, is a no-brainer if you do enjoy this. However, one thing that's important and one thing that I got wrong on my first game is you score the catacomb points only at the end of the game, not each time you land on the victory point stars. So if you look at the bottom of the catacombs here, you'll see that there are a variety of stars printed on this catacombs board. If you have your little piece that has this lantern symbol and it's on a catacomb space, you get to move on this catacombs track if you win that space, and if nobody else has those catacomb lanterns. And this made it so that during our first play of the game, the catacomb track was very, very important because we were scoring the stars every single time we traversed through it. And this was a big point swing because at the end of the game, the player who had traversed the entire way through had about 70 or 75 points lead over all of the other players. It was outrageous. As soon as we figured out what we did, we adjusted the scores. But since we had put so much time and effort into going through the catacombs, that 75-point lead dropped, and it was just a super blowout for the other players that barely even touched the catacombs track. So it was a little bit interesting to see the importance and the strength of a point system like this, but I could see that maybe this is a variant you may enjoy because it makes it so that that catacombs track is that much more incentivized to go to, which means the competition for those double catacomb spaces is going to be that much more tense. However, that is going to add some huge point swings because of how many points you can earn from this. So that is the correction for catacombs, for the catacombs portion in Lockup a Role Player Tale, that you only score the points for them at the end, but you do get those little token bonuses throughout. The next game I want to talk about is one that I have been playing wrong for so long, and this is Blood Rage. So Blood Rage is one of my favorite games. I love the agency in the game. I love the drafting. I love the control of your character and how you get to customize yourself throughout. How every card feels amazing to play, and it just feels super satisfying to see your characters grow in strength and how important the battles are. It reminds me a lot of something like Wonderland's War, where as you play, you want to be fighting as much as possible for specific strategies strategies to gain different benefits, whether it be to win, lose, move your position around the board, or influence the other characters in the game. It's a super satisfying experience, and at its core are the cards in Blood Rage. Now, Blood Rage has 3 ages, and in each of these ages, you're going to be drafting cards. You'll pick a couple, and you'll end each of them with 6 cards. After you've accumulated your hand, you'll use those 6 cards, and then you will discard the other 2 and then use them throughout the round. So you're carefully picking out your different pieces and hopefully setting up your dominoes in a way that they fall and put you out on top. You have a certain amount of resources that you use to play them. Now, this is really important because go figure, when drafting cards in Blood Rage, normally in most of these drafting games, when you're taking a card and passing it, the order of that draft changes from round to round. In Blood Rage, though, the order does not ever change. You don't draft clockwise one ways and then counterclockwise the next round. It is always clockwise for the drafting of this game. And this means that you can really influence a specific player throughout the entire experience. And if you get a certain card, you can essentially guarantee that the person to your right is never going to get a specific card if you're going to take it from them. So this does offer some interesting opportunities where you know that the player that's next to you in turn order is you're going to have even more influence over that character as opposed to the flip-flop that we were playing initially. So a very small rule here, but I do think this is interesting because it's not something that I've ever seen or ever played before. The countless times I've played this one, when you draft cards in Blood Rage, it is always clockwise. Our next game is going to a newer game. I guess this is not necessarily new. It's about 2 years old now, but this is Beyond the Sun. And this gets into our section of games that others have taught me incorrectly. In Beyond the Sun, it is a gigantic game of space exploration and conflict. And your whole goal is to get out a variety of these different production engines, whether it be for this rock resource, your population, and then get these ships that are going to go around and colonize planets. But at its heart and on the board and taking up the majority of the space in this game is a gigantic tech tree. Now, the smaller board on the side here, where all the colonization happens, is probably the most important thing that's going on in this entire map. But in its center is this giant tech tree that has worker placement spots and special abilities that the different players will be able to have access to. As you play, one of the action spots allows you to further develop the text trees. And you're going to do that by paying specific resources. And then if you have the prior conditions below, all of the prerequisites, you're able to feed those certain lines into a new ability. So for example, if you wanted to research this number 2 here, you would simply need this research on the bottom. But if you wanted to research this higher 3 up here, you would need to have 2 other resources connecting. So based on the types of those previous technologies, that is going to influence what your new technology will be. Each of them has their own sort of feel. For example, the red is more combat centric. So if you want to go down a specific line, you want to be using prerequisites that are from that red category. So the important rule distinction here, though, is when you research the next level of a tech tree in this game, if it's multicolor, which means it has different colors on the back, you get to pick you actually get to pick one of those colors and then reveal cards on the top of the deck until you hit 2 of those colors to pick from. Now, the way that we were introduced to this game originally was that when you went for the research, you just randomly drew until you hit some of the prerequisites. So it eliminated a little bit of the choice, which was kind of frustrating, specifically if you were going down certain paths. If you were really going down combat centric and the tech trees that were creating it beforehand were maybe green and red, you could sometimes accidentally hit 2 more non-combat focused cards. And it was a little frustrating because you had put all of this time and energy into developing this technology to pursue your strategy further. So I do like that there is choice. And when you actually initiate the development, you actually get to choose what you're researching. Not only does it make sense thematically, but also mechanically, as you are able to further invest in something and giving that information to other players, and it's become something that they can invest in. So I think that this is a nice change in the rules here. It's going to allow you to further develop and further go into those specific strategies for Beyond the Sun, give you a little bit more chance to go further into those strategies in Beyond the Sun. And I think that it will make for a more compelling game experience. So excited to play Beyond the Sun from the beginning with those tech tree paths in mind and start on a specific strategy from turn 1. So very cool. That is Beyond the Sun. The next game goes to a expansion for a game system that I've been loving, and this is the Unmatched series. Unmatched is a fighting game where you have a head-to-head competition between two specific fighters with their own special deck. You'll put them onto a map of some sort, and then you fight head-to-head until the enemy's hero is defeated. You've reduced their health to 0. One specific rule, though, that I had to tell somebody was incorrect, they didn't believe me at first, was for one of the characters from the Unmatched Cobble and Fog. I've been playing a lot of Unmatched with my brother Jordan, and he's pretty awesome at the game. He came in with his character of Invisible Man and was ready to tear it up. Invisible Man has a really cool skill set and a really cool pool of tokens that he gets to use and move around. They are these fog tokens that while the Invisible Man's in them, they give him extra defense bonuses. It's also going to allow him to move between his fog tokens. However, at the setup for Invisible Man, you put them on the board where you would normally put sidekicks, which is in your same zone. But unfortunately, my brother was playing before that when you are the Invisible Man, you can actually move the fog tokens whenever you take a move action with the character fighter. So when you set up the game, the fog tokens are treated as sidekicks and get placed, but when you're actually playing, they do not move except through the effects of your cards. This added a new layer of, I guess not necessarily lack of control, but more so planning of where to put the fog tokens and where their impacts would be the strongest, and I think that it makes Invisible Man a little bit more of a difficult character to pilot. He's very much in a strategy of you want to get these tokens out, use them for the defense buffs and their maneuverability, and stay away while getting out these big hits every so often. So I think that it is important, though, that you make this distinction that just because something has a setup condition of a sidekick, it doesn't necessarily mean it is treated as a sidekick for the rest of the game. With that being said, I do think that the Cobble and Fog set is pretty awesome. I think out of that whole box, Sherlock Holmes and Watson are definitely the most powerful, but I do think that Invisible Man has a very cool play style. Not my favorite in particular. I don't really like the hiding and running away play style, but Jekyll and Hyde, though, I really enjoy that fighter. I love the switching between the two forms and timing that right and switching to a more reserved and an aggressive play style throughout the course of the game. So there's a lot to love here, but for Invisible Man, just make sure that you are treating those tokens as just fog tokens and not sidekicks, so no extra moves for him. The last game that I want to talk about here is one of my favorite games in recent time. This is Wonderland's War. Wonderland's War has you playing as one of the court in Alice in Wonderland's setting. And this is going to have you fighting in a variety of different battles. Very similar to the Blood Rage, you're actually wanting to be in these battles, not only to score the points for being victorious in them, but also for all of the different other things you can do. You can forge chips onto your own private player boards to increase your powers and abilities. You can trigger the chips that you've been pulling to mess with the other opponents and to just gain advantages for the rest of the game. And then if you do win battles, you actually get to put on castles onto the board for additional scoring, as well as getting special extra strength for your future battles in those regions. So there's a big encouragement to fight, and there's a big encouragement to move around into different fights so you can put out more different castles for more varied scoring. Now, the first time that we played this, each of the battles of Wonderland's War is separated into two distinct phases. You have a tea party phase where you'll go around the middle of the main board and you'll collect cards, and those cards will have your different abilities and bonuses. But after you've collected those, you will end up going into battles and using those bonuses. Now, one thing that we played incorrectly the first couple times was at the end of these war phases, you will take all of your exhausted and all of your madness chips and shuffle them back into your bag. Generally, when you're fighting, you'll pull chips one at a time, and you'll put them at the top of your board here into what's called your active zone. These active chips will give you additional strength for the battle, and if you have some chips with special abilities, those will trigger at the end of the battle. Now, normally, from battle to battle, your bag stays the same, essentially. Every time you pull a madness chip, it'll go on this secondary madness track, and then as soon as you fill up that madness track, that is going to trigger your bag reshuffle. So you'll take all those madness tokens, all of your exhausted tokens that you've moved from your active, from the battles you've already fought, and then they'll go in your bag, and then that is going to be your new pool to pull from. This essentially encourages you to fight as much as possible and to sometimes push your limits to maybe bust yourself and pull more madness tokens to lose troops just so that you can refresh your bag and have access to your stronger chips again. It's a great mechanism, and I love the way it's going to push you to pull further more than you normally would. With that being said, I also enjoyed the fact that this new rule exists because at the end of the war phase, every player is going to shuffle all of those exhausted and madness chips right into their bag for a fresh reset for the next war phase. And this is a big deal for a couple of reasons. Not only are you resetting your odds, but you're also making it so that last battle, you can really go all out and you're not having to worry about the implications of leaving any active chips or exhausted chips or madness chips. So it makes the idea of pulling out early a little bit more of a choice and a little bit more of a difficult choice because you have to think carefully about the implications of I know my bag is going to be reset, so I can force a little bit more of a risky play here. So you have some interesting choices when it comes to the end of the war phase, and I think that this is a very important thing that you need to make sure is comes across when you are teaching Wonderland's War, because I do think it has some severe implications. Because this means that everyone is starting on an equal footing in the next war phase as well. You don't have any players that have a bunch of their chips already out of the bag. It's going to put them on more equal footing. I do have one more additional bonus here for Wonderland's War. We have one more game that I do want to share, and this is for not one more game, but one more rule in Wonderland's War, and this is very specific. So this is one of the sets of the Wonderlandians. This game features something very similar to Quacks of Kunlenberg or any Dice Realms, any game with a lot of different chip types, but you have different cards that are going to change the ability of the chips. And this one in particular has a chip set called the Flamingos, and they're generally about doubling strength or increasing strength in a unique and interesting way. Whenever you fight a battle, you're generally going to have a track that you're tracking all your strength on, and then some of these spaces will have special features. Primarily the forge space is the one that you're going to see a lot. In this forge space, if you end there at the end of the battle, you get an additional bonus. Instead of just stopping and losing or winning, you get an extra bonus of forging, which means you get to take one of your chips from your active zone and put it as a bonus. Now, the thing that we were doing wrong here was we had a bonus set C of flamingos, which they read, after adding strength from this chip, you may move your strength tracker to the closest forge symbol. Now, originally, when we played this, we played it completely incorrectly, where we misread it as the next forge space. Now, on the strength track, there are some thresholds for these forge spaces. There's a 2, there's one on 5, there's one on 10, and then there's one on, I think, 15 or 16. So if you were able to time it correctly with the way that we were originally playing it, this chip could essentially be something as strong as an 8 chip for one bump. Oh, it was crazy. And the fact that it put you onto a forge space as well made it so that whenever you stopped, even if you stopped super far ahead, you were guaranteed to stop with that additional bonus. Now, this choice is a little bit more straightforward when you do play these flamingo chips, because you will move to the closest forge space, which means you can go forward or backwards. So I think this offers a very cool choice as well, though, not just playing for the strongest play, but maybe you feel that you're not going to win a specific combat, so you play one of these flamingo chips just to rush back to the nearest forge space, and now you have a flamingo chip that you can safely use to forge instead of losing one of your other more powerful chips. So I like the flexibility that this set C flamingo chip brings, and I think that is a very interesting chip overall. So that all being said, those are all of the games that I wanted to talk about here for 5 board game rules mistakes. If you had any experiences with these games, please let me know down in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching and for dealing with that little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning of the video. But I appreciate all your time here, and I appreciate you sticking around. Please let me know what rules mistakes that you've been making, and if I've helped you with figuring out some that you might have been making right now. Thank you so much for watching. Side Game Strong.